Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Okay, my friends. Once again, it is indeed time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, J.C. McCauley, along with the champions of talk. Today we have with us Dr. Mya Bowen and Luis Delgado joining us at the 9 o'clock hour. So buckle up and let's get ready and get our talk on. Good morning there, Dr. Bowen. How are you today?
Good morning. I am fabulous. I'm wishing that I was at a beach right about now, but this background will have to do to get me in that zone.
The virtual beach. The virtual
Absolutely.
beach.
Where you get no sand between your toes.
I love it. I love it. Nothing like walking on the beach sand free.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning. We got some rain going on, but all good. I noticed that outside of my my condo where I planted some seeds last year, they've grown and sprouted above 6 feet, and I have no clue as to what they actually are right about now, but they're growing.
Well, you had a good week though.
Oh, listen,
actually, it's been it's been 2 weeks.
It's been
3 weeks. Nah.
About 3 weeks or so. Since everything has kind of like come to a squash, but it's interesting because as a leader of my department, what I'm finding is that I'm still in tune to the types of emails that are coming through. I'm getting kind of certain phone calls related to some things of urgency, but I'm also signed up for some workshops and conferences. One of them, a leadership academy that I was actually suggested for by my supervisor, which is proving to be a very interesting journey, perspective, understanding leadership, take risk, understanding oneself, and how it communication and acknowledgement of as part of the team. So this is going into day. So after the show, I'll be going into my workshop. I'll be finalizing on Friday, but so far so good.
Well, that's very interesting. Yeah, leadership. So you are in a leadership academy.
Yes,
they should be free across the country.
It should. Now check this out. We were supposed to be in Cape Cod because of the uptick in COVID cases in Cape Cod. It pushed us into the virtual setting, so it's all okay. I'd rather say sorry, and so we're doing this virtually. But I was sure enough to plan and enjoy myself at Cape Cod. That was the first time I've actually visited. However, this life I have to learn to pivot, and leadership has to learn. So it's all good.
Now you're cutting in and out for some reason. I don't know.
Oh, it's maybe because I'm moving a little bit too much. Let me see here if I can adjust. Yeah, I got that early morning coffee going through me.
All right. Yeah, it seems a little bit more stable now.
All right.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Leadership is a very interesting thing. I was talking to a very good friend of mine yesterday, and she was saying she's not so sure supervising is all it's cracked up to be. She's having second thoughts about leading people, because you really have to. It's almost like parenting, but you're parenting grown folk. And a lot of people in leadership are not leaders.
No.
They're in the position of lead. So they're in leadership positions.
Mm-hmm.
But alas, they're not leaders.
Right. Like, so one of the things that is interesting in my whole leadership dynamic is along the 20 years I've been in leadership positions where you deal with so many personalities, right? And you have those individuals that don't want to take in objectives of the organization. Like, it's not that you are, pretty much following me per se, but when it is that we have tasks that we have to get done as a team, everybody's hands should be ready and willing to engage, but that's not always the case. And when changes occur, everybody should be accustomed to change. Minute by minute, things are changing, and yet and still, you have those individuals that are stuck in their own stubbornness that impact how fast it is that we actually task actually done, right? And so then, if I switch up types of assessment that I've actually partaken in, individuals have noted that I tend to do things done by myself. You don't have individuals that are contributing after you've asked several times. If you, as a leader, don't get it done, it doesn't get done. And that's the missing contact from that observation that was noted. Duly noted, I understand. So what I have to do is think about how to creatively get more engagement out of my team, which is going to be a whole type of scenario come to fall. But again, it gives me time to actually think about it, and to incorporating more members of my through engagement. So all I have to say is I'm open to the criticism that is not critical but detriment. Critical from the perspective of me reflecting upon what it is I have to on some things that so I'm good. I'm critical. I'm critical assessments or whatever the case may be. I'm gonna say, but I know that betterment of myself as a
yeah, you're cutting in and out. I don't know why. But
no.
yeah, I could kind of make out the gist of what you're saying, but
okay.
yeah, you're cutting in and out. So,
that's not good. But overall, what I was saying is that when it is that you get assessed, the assessment is supposed to allow for you to self-reflect and then think about the types of changes that you would like to incorporate for the betterment of self as well as the team.
Okay, that was nice and clear. That's good. Now we can. That was good.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, in terms of team, as you were saying, the necessity of what's in the best interest. Let me rephrase that. Getting the job done, the objective, the outcome is, the deliverable or the outcome is what you're working toward. And so the team is there to make that happen. And I think that there's been such a conflating of positions in terms of leadership versus manager that we have management best practices, policies, and procedures that seem to have been commingled or whatever into leadership. Because I think leadership is a little bit different. But
it is.
But we have institutions, we have entities, we have groups, whatever the case is, that are trying to have management kind of sensitivities applied to the personnel. So you wind up paying more attention to the sensitivities of the staff and the people than you do in getting the job done. And I think the objective suffers, and a good team, because I think in leadership, maybe leadership is motivating the individuals on the team, and if they can't be motivated, they need to be removed. And then that's really where I'm heading. They need to be removed, and people seem to be reluctant to remove folk before their presence has caused great damage.
This is why all the unions, as well as policies, as well as other types of HR standards are, right? So, I mean, from the perspective that just enough to get by, and they don't necessarily have to be a part of the team. It's almost as if there should be a standard set of questions regarding the hiring process to actually get a sense of where individuals are in terms of, right? If you don't really want to work as a team, I should be able to identify that through the hiring process. So, I'm just noticing how it is that, individuals step into a leadership position and they may not even know the position of that actual organization. So right? So if you ask them what their vision for the actual organization is, and they can't give that in or the mission statement, that means that they haven't done that deep dive in terms of searching what it is that organization is about. So is it their motivation to just get the position as well as the salary associated with the position? Or is there some other type of motivating factor? Because they clearly don't know anything about the organization. So what is their why, or what's their purpose for being a part of said organization, if it is that they know nothing about it and can't communicate that to individuals that have been there for a small while or a large while? Are they willing to be a part of the team? Are they a good coachable fit, which is something I learned in my management classes a long time ago? And overall, what are they doing during their tenure as said organization?
You're cutting in and out again. I don't know why, but yeah.
Oh.
But I think the gist of what you were saying is that the importance, or almost it's essential that the people in positions of leadership understand what the mission is, and
right.
If they don't, are they a good fit for that organization? The team leader, and that's an interesting thing. I'm having these real time thinking here. Because it's almost like a contradiction in terms. As maybe what I'm thinking is not matching up with what's coming out my mouth. I'm like, team leader. So, well, wait a minute. What do you mean team leader? What team leader? The leader. It just happens that they're leading a team. See, that here it is. I guess this is the collision in ideas or terms. Leadership requires voluntary. Leadership requires of those who are being led a willingness to surrender their leadership abilities to the person in charge. And I think a lot of times teams are not, like in a workplace, the team really has no vested interest. It's just a job. It's as though they're not in the fight with you. They won't do whatever. Are they aware of the mission? I guess is what I'm trying to say. These are real time out loud processing of ideas.
Very relevant. So hopefully my audio is coming in crystal clear right about now.
Slow your pace down.
Okay, I will.
I think the auto limiter in your system is trying to adjust volume. So
okay.
And you like myself from time to time will talk a little bit fast, and it's trying to lower volumes, is crushing some of your words.
Okay. So when you begin to take the walk or the journey in leadership, where you find yourself looking at the outcomes and objectives presented, there tends to be a disconnect with individuals that are part of said team, just as you stated, because again, as the leader, you don't really know how vested they are outside of it just being a job or position that allows for them to get a paycheck. So if someone is just working towards retirement, they may take on the task as being, just part of the process, and they might not be enthusiastic about it. They don't consider, the time frame, the objectives in terms of what has to go into it. So basically what I'm saying is that they don't take it seriously enough to be a goal of theirs per se. So they don't take ownership of it in terms of being a team player, right? So my thing is that teamwork makes the dream work. If other individuals don't believe that and they're part of your team, then that's a problem. That is a problem. Because where it is that essentially there's no buy-in from the team members, and they kind of drag their heels in the sand, either virtually or in real life, right? Because we've been meeting through Zoom a whole lot. But even in the office, individuals may not see how it is that their participation is valuable in getting what needs to get done. And what are the motivators of individuals in their respective positions outside of the team, but definitely in terms of being a part of a team that is supposed to get certain things done. That becomes how determine effectiveness of the organization overall, partly per the projects that are assigned, and then overall how the actual organization runs itself, presents itself. And so it gets into some really nitty detail in regards to those individuals that find themselves taking on positions that they're required for them to work as a team. They don't have motivation, or they don't care. They're all into that in a timely manner. It's a lot of different dynamics.
I'm thinking of team, and so I guess like, and something you said at the beginning of this of this line of thought here, the idea, the notion of people just like kind of biding their time, and I think of many workspaces and people and people that I know and people that I've come across over the years who have said to me without any shame, I'm just biding my time. 2 more years and I'm out. So, they're the focus of their contribution is to do nothing for 2 years. And then they're going to retire and collect their pension. They're good. In your mind, they've already given all that they're going to give in the first, 30 years or the first 20 years or whatever it is. And so now their contribution is to just come in and get paid.
Yes.
So, what if a football team had that attitude? Well, it's the last quarter. I put my body on the line for the first 3 quarters. I'm just on the field, man. Don't throw me no ball. I'm not, I don't think we gonna win. So, they're not playing to the last minute. They're not contributing to an objective of victory. They're just getting paid. And I think that in a system where people aren't in it for a very clearly stated objective with contributing their all, we see the work ethic in play. So I'll use for an example, and this may not be a good example, but I think it's a relevant one, and I'm not trying to deconstruct or analyze the successes or failures of the recent tragedy in Texas. But if we take the mom whose objective was to get her child out the building at all costs, and that's not to speak negatively of any other parent, but she didn't care what the obstacles were. She found a way around them and then went with everything she had. Then you had individuals who are tasked with rescue, tasked with mitigating the seriousness of this tragedy that is unfolding. They have all of the equipment, all of the tools, all of the information. They have systems to gather intelligence. They have systems to see, hear, listen. They have training. They have best practices. They've got policies and procedures, command and control. They have all of this stuff. But if there's no sense of, if there's no command coming down, then I'm not moving no further, because this is my job. Well, I could get killed. I gotta follow procedure. And so to me, there's no leadership there. There's just function. And you have a bunch of functionals. No one is providing leadership. Everyone is waiting to be told what to do. There are a series of parts in the machine waiting for the signal to move up or down. And unless they get a signal from some external source, they're not gonna go. So there's no leadership in them. And so they've been managed. They're being managed. Maybe that's what I'm reducing this down to. People are being managed, not led. People are Yeah, they're being managed. They're being managed, not led. And their manager is incapable of leading. And I think that we see this across the country unfolding at, nuclear explosion rate. Because it's not that people are necessarily, I'm going to use a very nasty word for many people. It's not necessarily that they're stupid, but they're incompetent for the position in which they are in, because they don't have a level of competency to execute the task at hand. And the one thing that makes them incompetent is that they're managers and not leaders. They won't take any risk, and they're not working in real time to find solutions. They're waiting until something can be worked out, and then they are told. So they just sit around waiting. And that you see that whether it's in churches, whether it's in nonprofits, whether it's in government, whether it's in the arts agencies, it's whether it's in business, small business, big business, and then I'll use this as an example too. Elon Musk told Tesla that they had to cut back 10%. He had a really, 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 really bad feeling about the economy. And, that kind of a comment is just so anti those in management type of conducting the affairs. I'm purposely not using the L word. Conducting the affairs that are at hand. They want something that's guaranteed, and they don't consider intuition, seat of the pants, analysis based on your life experiences that have brought you to a place of success. They don't consider any of that legitimate. You can't just fly things by the seat of your pants. What do you mean a feeling? Well, the feeling's gotten the guy where he is now. His company is successful as it is based upon a whole set of criteria that he alone has. And since they can't be verified, validated, and justified by some outside entity, somehow they're being silly. But I say all that to say this. Last night I'm listening to a couple of news places, and they're talking about not inflation, but depression. Now, it's been a long time since I've heard legitimate people talking about the possibility that we could be on the brink of a depression. But that would be right in line with what Elon was saying, last week. That would be a huge, huge downturn in the economy. And so if people are waiting for all of the information they need before they make a decision, the information may be get off the ship because it's taking on too much water. But everybody's sitting around waiting, watching the water come up, and incapable of making the decisions that are necessary to save lives, incapable of making decisions necessary to educate children, analysis paralysis. Everybody wants to be so safe that they become incapable.
Incompetent. The incompetency comes in because of the urge for individuals to total line as status quoers, right? They want to maintain a status quo because they're comfortable. Well, guess what? If the ship is taking on water and you really want to be comfortable, you'll soon be dead as well. Okay, so you can't get more comfortable than dead. Okay, all right. So we're Elon Musk being the example as leadership or a leader. His visionary intuition and macro analysis of the environment, taking in all factors, allow for him to communicate to those management status quoers that, listen, we need to cut 10%. They want to resist it because they need something tangible. Not all things are tangible, right? Not all things can be actually physically touched or, let's say, seen immediately. So if it is that leadership is telling management and management is bucking leadership, then there's going to be a catastrophic event that actually occurs if it is that management does not take the lead from leadership to do exactly what it is that has been provided as the next steps in getting the objectives carried out. So it becomes very dramatic, dynamic in terms of internal infighting, where it is that management doesn't trust leadership, true leadership, from the perspective that they can't see the tangibles. That's not your job. Your job is to make sure that you understand what was communicated by leadership and carry that out, not to fight with leadership in order to, I guess, maintain the status quo because you're comfortable. Leadership doesn't make you comfortable. Leadership pushes you out of your comfort zone, as a matter of fact. They take the risk that managers won't.
Dr. Steve Perry at Capital Prep, I think that I could say this without fear of contradiction, provided leadership in a system that looks for managers. Leadership is nuanced. Leadership is desirous of a positive outcome. But I think leadership understands they have no more control over what happens 20 minutes from now than the bean counters. Because we don't know the future. But based on the past, I can pretty much know that this objective could be matched because I know how to put this here to get that. So it's more like playing an instrument or leading, conducting a symphony where there's lots of different instruments all delivering different sounds. And if you play the right instrument the right way, you are pretty much guaranteed to get a particular sound. And so I think that there's such a desire for guaranteed outcome that the powers that be are terrified of individuals that lead. And leadership requires motivation. And as you say, pulling people out of their comfort zone, strengthening them so that they now understand, wow, I guess I actually can do that. How do I know? Because I just did. I didn't think I could do this. See, you did it. You can do more even, too. I'm not going to ask of you more than you can deliver because I need you to be successful. I don't need you to fail. I'm not trying to have you fail. But I think people are so uncomfortable, so stuck in their comfort zone that when they're being motivated, they process it as, well, they're speaking to me in a mean way. They're telling me I can't. There's this tendency to push back, as athletes do with their coach. Give me one more lap. No, coach, come on, man. I can't do that. But the coach is preparing you to have the tenacity and endurance to have the endurance in the fight. Now, if you can't have it's not going to come at the fight. You have to build it up for the fight.
Yes. And so what we see here is if we use my colleague, Dr. Steve Perry, as the example of leadership, because he was a part of a system that did not want to shake the apple tree, wanted to maintain the status quo, so to speak, right? Then he becomes the enemy to the system. right? So,
right.
so here it is that if the mission is to produce success through education, and because he's deemed as radical through his leadership by doing so, he's achieving the mission, but other components within said system is deeming his actions as a threat to what the real mission actually is. So the mission written is one thing, he's achieving it, but the unwritten mission is another, and he's interrupting or disrupting what that actually is. So he becomes the enemy, the unwritten goals and objectives of said system, and the enemy to us. I hope that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. So if you have, well, sticking with the educational analogy here, if you have a school, all right, and we'll stick with Dr. Perry. If you're teaching kids that are challenged, right? All kids are challenged because most kids going into a grade don't know what they're going to know when they leave. So the objective is to how do we impart information to these young people who are constantly in a state of development and prepare them for the next grade with an understanding that even though they're going into the 7th grade, they have to leave the 12th grade and be prepared for what's after that. So we're going to build on them. Now, we've been teaching kids for a long time all over the world. We have all kinds of different models. But we're looking at this model and we see we have a city full of kids that somehow something is wrong because they're not prepared to go to the next immediate grade, let alone our long-term objectives. If we keep doing stuff the way we're doing it, we're going to get the same outcomes. And so we need to change everything. And the system itself is saying, no, we can't change. So if you don't change things radically, then the deliverable is not going to change. So if you have teachers that don't want to change, they don't want to. So all right, for an example, if we're going to tell students that they need to wear uniforms, and there is a overarching strategic objective associated with the uniformity of dress, without going into all of that, pros and cons of that, we've determined that that's what we're going to do. Then we have the adults within the system. So we want the adults to kind of model the behavior. So while we're not going to tell you all you have to wear a uniform, there is a dress code that we want you all to have that will help communicate that not only do we want this radical change from the kids, but we're also going to need, for practical purposes, us to change. So we're demonstrating to the kids and modeling to them that we're in this with you. Now, we have teachers who, I'm not changing. They ain't gonna tell me what to wear. And all this time I've been in the system and this, that, and the third, and I don't want to have it, and who does he think he is? And I'm gonna call the union steward. And he telling us that we have to do this. Next thing he's gonna be telling us, now they're projecting into the future all of the bad things that they think might happen, even though they haven't. And so now you've got all this pushback, and the members of the quote unquote teaching team are in open rebellion and resistance to the leadership, and they've been empowered to be rebellious and not deliver. They have more power to resist then there is incentive for them to do. You can't fire them. You can't discipline them. They could take time off. And so, I'm not saying this of all teachers. I'm just using this as an example of something I think people could wrap their heads around. Because the objective is to get these kids to be able to read at the 9th grade level, not the 3rd grade. We want you reading at the 9th grade level way before you get there. So if we could get you on the 9th grade level, at the
5th grade.
By the 5th grade.
By the 5th grade. That shouldn't be a problem. Right? So here's a dynamic that I'm going to throw out here.
Mm-hmm.
If it is that focus strictly on 2 subjects, math and literacy, by the time that the students get to middle school, they'll be ready to actually dive into other aspects of disciplines, right? If you can't read and understand or write, how are you going to conquer questions in science, social studies, and other subjects? You're not. If you can't read, comprehend, and write about what you've read, then what's the necessity of even diving into science? What's the necessity of diving into social studies? Because if they're not taking it in and having a foundational understanding as well as confidence within themselves that they understand what's going on with what they're reading, everything else is out the door. As a matter of fact, when we start thinking about math, there's only addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Those are the operands. Everything else incorporates theory. Now, if they can't get those 4 functions down, where else are we going with the math? We have build foundation. So, for example, when it is that they start a new construction or a school, if that foundation is whack, meaning you think it's okay, but it's not foundationally sound, anything that you build on top of that non-foundationally sound foundation eventually will crumble. So on the outside, it looks nice, but when it's put under the test, when it's being tested, when you test it for structural safetiness and sturdiness, it's not passing the test. We have an issue. That means that with everything that we do, what has not actually occurred in terms of outcomes, got to get back to the foundation. They've got this new math thing going on. I don't know who in the world put that together, but that was divisive and distracting. There's a lot of teachers that can't even do math. So how in the world am I going to teach something that I don't even understand myself? Because I digress. Start with the foundation. Let us focus in on making sure that the students understand from the beginning, from the foundation, from the start, how to read, how to use math, what the purpose is. Let's have an understanding of why it's important. Do these students know why in mathematics? If we did a survey, you'd be surprised that there is no foundation or foundational understanding of why knowing how to read and comprehend is even necessary, or how to do math is even necessary. As a matter of fact, fast food places have replaced the numbers, and now we have images. So if we as a society are really and truly just dumbing down society for those who are going to benefit from a dumb society, then guess what? We're succeeding.
At breakneck speed, it would seem.
Yes, sir.
We're going to take a short break, be joined by Luis Delgado. We'll continue talking a little bit about leadership. And so we're going to bring him in. We're going to talk about, we'll expand on the sports and chess analogy, because critical thinking is essential if you're going to be a leader and if you're going to have leadership. And, you know, if you can't think, then you can't lead. I don't think they want. That's why they have managers. They don't want people critically thinking about solutions. They want people to carry out and do whatever they've been instructed and told. Stick and stay. We will be right back.
Independent thinkers are Puerto Rican, Mexican, Peruvian, Indian, Bosnian, Italian, Irish, Jamaican, African American, European, straight, gay, Nigerian, transgender, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, short, tall, skinny, rich, poor, happy, sad. Some of us hold a PhD and others a GED. And though we may be Democrats, Republicans, or members of the Working Families Party, we all have escaped the plantation of party politics and become independent thinkers because we as individuals are more than a party. You see, independent thinkers come from all walks of life. And the one thing we all have in common is that we love, live, laugh, and learn in the city of Hartford. We are the constituents, and the government of Hartford belongs to us. My name is J. Stan McCauley. I'm an independent thinker, and I approve this message because it's time to stop towing the party line and vote for a candidate you can trust. You too can escape the plantation of party politics if you have the courage to free your political mind.
Fisher STEM magnet school, and before it became a magnet school, it was a community school, and that's again where I started advocating for my children coming into the school system, and then it transitioning over to a magnet school. So what I can offer, or parents coming in or going into the school system, you know, advocate for your children. This program, Hartford Parent University, is a perfect program to be a part of because they teach you your parental rights, and if you're not involved, you will become involved once you become familiar with what your rights are and how you can advocate for your kids and assisting them with their education. If you want to go ahead and go far, you want your children to succeed, this is, like I said, the best program to attend so that they can go ahead and have a better education. And if, you know, by any chance the administrative at the school isn't listening, become a member of the Hartford Parent University, and this is where your voice will be heard and all your concerns, just like the rest of us parents. We are a part of something, and we are making a difference in the community of Hartford. So just want to say thank you.
All right, my friends, we are back. It's Morning Talk. J. Stan McCauley, along with the champions of talk, we have Dr. Mya Bowen and Luis Delgado in Studio 1A. Dr. Bowen joining us the way most people do, remotely, in the wonderful world of Zoom reality. She's zooming in with the Zoom reality. We have Luis Delgado.
Mya, good morning, Stan, and good morning to all our viewers and listeners. I'm so happy to be here, and the subject that you're on today is fabulous, man. This leadership thing and the individual that you spoke about. I'm just asking a question for our viewers and our listeners, but isn't this the gentleman that was kind of run out of town for allowing the athletes to come in without going through the lottery or something like that? And if I'm mistaken, I apologize, but I think it was him.
Yeah, Dr.
Yeah, I mean, Lou, you bring up something very interesting. You know, as human beings, we're flawed, but already forgiven. So regardless of what it is that may have transitioned him into another position, in general, when looking at leadership, you got to take risks. You may make mistakes, and that's prone to all human beings. And so we have to really start to look at what it is that we're looking for in terms of outcomes from an educational system that's supposed to educate students that transition into adulthood, that then become individuals that become positive, productive contributors to our society. Now, if you have individuals that can't critically think about solutions in their own personal lives, how then can they add to solving for issues in the environment, right? So let's look at the 13 years that students spend in an educational system. And when they leave that educational system, they are not good for self or others. And so where it is that we find ourselves not really taking on the huge mantle of building strong children, which is easier than trying to correct grown people, then we've got a problem, because they're going to transition into adulthood. But if they can't handle specific types of things in their own personal lives, based on having gone through a system over the past 13 years, then they're not going to be competitive. Think about this. If it is that a boxer were to contend with someone who had actually trained versus not being trained themselves, then they're going to get their stuff spanked in that ring. And so what we have is a large group of our society being placed in this system, but exiting without the type of training that they need to contend in life. So that's the problem. We can talk about all the mistakes that we want, but at the point where we're supposed to be looking for solutions, we can't keep the status quo as is. As you always speak about, the status quo is not something that we can consistently hold on to in order to get the types of results that we're seeking.
So I would like to respond to that. The first thing that I would say is that in terms of an example of leadership, I think we can use somebody that has.
No, he's not an example of leadership.
Well, you used them.
Well, right.
Well,
but let
me finish my thought process. I think we can use somebody that's better, because the type of decision that gentleman made was very hurtful, to our community, in terms of allowing students to come in and not have to go through the lottery because they're good athletes. That was not a mistake. Well, that was a decision that was made.
Okay, so
and so the other thing is, I would like to comment on, Dr. Mya, and I'm not throwing shade at you, but it sounds like, to me, from where I'm standing, after everything that we've spoken of, it sounds like you're almost still trying to defend a system that wasn't created for us, is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, is creating workers for big pharma and for all the other, for big industry. So we don't have any thinkers. You're absolutely correct. Studies have shown that most of the learning that you do after the 4th grade, you do through reading. So if you're not reading, you're just repeating what other people say or what you hear, what you see on TV. So I think that for me, what we have to do is stop trying to look to the answers for our problems, like I always say, from the people who created them. So the type of narrative that I'm hearing today is kind of that. We have to sit, I don't know what it looks like, because we've never had it, right? But we have to create our own educational system that's going to include all of the things that you're talking about. Our kids should know how to balance their own, balance their checking account and manage their own money. Our kids should know how to change a tire. And there's a lot of other things that they should know. But in terms of what these big industry needs, those are not the things that they need. So why would schools teach that? Our children are just, this is like a modern version of slavery. You know what I'm saying? We are training, our schools are made, the educational system in America is trained, it's like a farm system for all this big industry. So we rarely have. You know what I like? When I look on Facebook and I look at some things, I see that a lot of young Africans from the continent, not from one particular country, from the continent, they're amazing inventors. They're building cars that run on water. They're doing amazing things, but they have a different, educational system. So that would be my feedback on that.
Well, right, I think. Let me jump in real quick too. The as it pertains to him being run out of town, he was run out of town not for that. He was run out of town because he was a disruptor to the status quo. Now, he wasn't run out of town for putting politicians' kids in school, jumping the lottery.
And whoever he put in front, it was wrong. That's all I'm saying.
Right. But if we're going to run somebody out of town on the idea that they jumped the lottery, the school is filled with kids who jumped the lottery. So that's clearly not why they ran him out of town. So the issue here isn't defending Steve Perry. We're not trying to defend Steve Perry. I'm using Steve as someone who within an educational system was a disruptor. There are plenty of, we're not talking about, that's not an issue of him being a leader. It's an issue of what happens when there are disruptors in the system. The compliant few get through. Those who are successful and delivering get run out. Steve delivered. So we can nitpick what he did wrong. And I mean, we can nitpick there's folk all kinds of places in all kinds of positions all over the city who we can nitpick they're wrong. They're still there. They're still there because they're compliant and they get through. All right. So So this is really not about Steve Perry. It's more about leadership. Now, as far as systems designed for, nothing's designed for us in this country, period.
Nothing.
The car wasn't designed for women, so they shouldn't be driving cars. The airplane wasn't designed for black people, so we shouldn't be on airplanes. We shouldn't be on anything. We should just get up and leave, but we don't leave. We go to work. We use the systems as they're convenient for us, but then when there's something we don't like, we say it wasn't designed for us. We can't. In my opinion, we can't have it both ways. You know.
Right.
You
so
know,
I'm.
So
I am not defending this system at all. So from your perspective, you know, by design, yes, it's doing what it's supposed to do. Now, based on what you stated, as well as in terms of what I'm taking in, is that we need to take ownership of how it is that we want to become the imparters of education for our children.
Absolutely.
So respectively, it starts in the home. It starts in the home. Now, if you look at the variety of homes, not all homes value education. However, based on the system actually being in place whereby we currently get free education, kids are required to be placed into this educational system. The question then becomes, how often and how much of an impact can parents have in determining what it is that those objectives are in terms of outcomes, and what is their role in buffering or building or training up their respective child and or children and getting those critical literacy skills, those math skills. It starts at home. So we can't just say, okay, it's the school system. Okay, yeah, okay, they go to the school system, but before they got to the school system, they were with you for the first 4 years, 4 or 5 years. And so what did you do as a parent? And so with the foundation that starts at home, we can build strong children that transition into adulthood, despite going to a system that is designed to do opposite of what it is that we value in terms of education. So me defending the system is not where I'm placing myself in a position to do. I'm pointing out specifics that should actually be occurring in an idealistic world. We know where we are, but we have to operate in said environment. And so, as you stated as well, you don't have the solution, but we're here thinking about said solutions. And if we want to bring everything back to ownership, the ownership belongs to the parents that gave birth to these children, right? To the children that will become a part of our greater society. And it becomes an impetus of us, or a value in us, that we actually ground our children, whereby despite going into a system that is not, building them up or training them, we do the training ourselves at home, so that despite what the system is doing, we still have students that graduate as well as transition into adulthood ready to compete. It's about competition. And so if it is that, for example, Lou, if you were to be matched up with Mike Tyson, who's going to win that bout? Mike Tyson's going to win, because it is that there's a differential in the type of training that both of you all have actually engaged in. So all I'm saying is that we have a responsibility for self as well as our children to take ownership of how it is that we go about the educational process, despite the system that is currently in place that was designed to do what it's currently doing. Okay, so we've got to take ownership. We can't keep pointing fingers at the system. Where's the finger? We've got 5 other fingers pointing back at us. What are we doing? Okay, so we've got to take the ownership. It's no other way around it. So you have a decision as a parent as to what it is that you do or do not do. But at the end of the day, yeah, pointing fingers is not going to solve any of our problems.
Doctor, we got caller. You're on the air. Mr. McGriff.
Hey, can you hear me good?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Good morning, brother.
Good morning. Stan pretty much said everything that I wanted to say, but I just wanted to also add that on the specifically, I thought Steve was a great leader, mainly because he shook up the status quo, and he created some very encouraging numbers as it relates to graduation rate and number of students that went to college after they graduated and things like that. So I thought he was a great leader in context with what you were speaking about earlier about leadership. Any person who has been identified as a leader historically, man or woman, we can dig into their background and find out where they jack things up. It's not an excuse, it's just a fact. We can dig into their background and find out where they made some mistakes and did some things that they probably would think twice about doing, afterwards, including Martin Luther King and other so-called leaders. So I just wanted to put that on the table. And I also wanted to say that I think somewhere along the line, we're going to have to think about another way to address our issue as it relates to education. Because in this age and time, to say it starts in the home is extremely unrealistic, especially with parents at home focused on paying bills and children at home focused on all of the distractions associated with electronics and all of the other things. Children nowadays, even with two working parents in a wonderful environment, spend very, very little time sitting around having conversations about life with their parents. And in Black communities with people who are pretty, with us who still working on trying to recover our consciousness from the period of the European enslavement of African people, the starts at home thing is just not realistic. Now, that's an opinion. That's not necessarily a fact. It's just an opinion. So I think at some point we're going to have to start looking at another
approach,
solution or approach, other than just saying, well, it starts at home. But if it's not going on at home, then we're not being responsible. It's a new day and a new time, and it was already tough before all of these new electronic distractions. Now it's almost impossible to use that as an approach for doing what's best for young people and students. Thanks for letting me comment. Peace.
Thank you. It's good to hear from you.
I just wanted to chime in on that. I appreciate that opinion that Mr. McGriff expressed. It's interesting because at home is where everything starts. Like in terms of being introduced to communication, verbal communication, nonverbal communication, whether or not the deep dive into strategically educating the child is actually beginning. That's a whole nother thing, because there's a lot of variety, again, in every family in terms of what their goals and their focuses are on, because again, everybody is respectively diving into different areas based on their circumstances. But, the babies come home with the family. So, I mean, if education is not, the priority, something else is. But again, where it is that they become accustomed to their environment, verbal communication, nonverbal communication, it's at home, or whatever environment that baby finds itself in. Between the first, I'm going to say 4 to 5 years per studies. That's where they're absorbing all their information. And so whether or not it's education focused or something completely different, the start is definitely going to be the home base or whatever that environment is. And they're taking it all in, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever that is. And it's too much variety out there to actually dictate whether or not education is really the actual focus. But the child is learning from its environment and whoever is a part of that environment. And so those aspects can't be taken away. Education in and of itself is actually ongoing. And so, yes, we need better solutions. We need to come up with how it is that we're going to be competitive in terms of being able to solve our own problems, understanding our own consciousness, as Mr. McGriff always points out. But it's got to start. If it doesn't start, then, the status quo is going to remain.
Well, there are some people out there, Dr. Mya, who have had incredible success. The problem is that, politicians and bureaucrats always put money in front of our children and our elderly, and they're ready to give money to Ukraine, to Israel, and other countries on a moment's notice. But there's a brother who's very interesting, and I followed his work, and I've often spoke about him. His name is Jeffrey Canada, and he's a brother from Harlem who started the Harlem Children's Zone. And so what he did, he started out small, very small, but he took all the children like in a 2-block radius and put them in a school. And then he addressed their issues. If the parents were drug addicts, he found them treatment. If they didn't have a job, he found them a job. If they didn't have an apartment, he found them an apartment. He got them medical insurance. He took care of everything that would prevent a child from learning. He removed all the obstacles. And obviously the scores and everything was, astronomical. So I think that for me, as an indigenous man, as a black man, for me, education starts at home, because I understand that concept, right? But everybody doesn't have that. Everybody wasn't raised in the same home. So we educate our children. In my family, we educate our children at home, and we send them to school to get trained, because that's what they do. So you're right, education starts at home, and it has to be basic so they understand what they're going to school for, because a lot of that stuff to me is completely useless. You know what I'm saying? But money or resources should never be an obstacle, to make things better for ourselves, our families, and our communities. So for me, we always going to have, I'm always going to have a say in how things are done, whether I like them or not, because it impacts me. And the reason that I was disappointed in the choosing of that brother is because he did something that impacted our families in a very bad way. A lot of our children of color missed an opportunity to get in there through the right way. So I'm just not pointing out a rule that he broke. I'm also pointing out that brothers like him have an opportunity to do great things, and sometimes they falter because they think they're better than everybody else and they can get away with things. I believe in breaking the rules. You know what I'm saying? Especially if they're racist, if they're oppressive. Yeah, I believe in doing things like that, but I don't believe in breaking the rules just for the heck of it, like they say. No, there has to be a purpose, when we do things and it's going to make the situation better, not make it worse. So leadership, when we talk about leadership, it's very hard for me to think of any really, even people like the great leaders, because they always worked under extremely oppressive circumstances that many of us can never imagine what that's like. We can see it in the movies and we can read it in books and people can tell us about it, but how many of us have really lived that experience?
Well, I don't think we've lived the experience of the past, but we don't live in the past. We live in the present and tomorrow.
But what I'm saying is that the people who were calling leaders lived under extremely oppressive times, and the a lot of the and I always say this, many of our customs and traditions are born out of the need to survive. So the decisions that they're made were always made under duress.
But I think that's a human nature thing, Lou. I don't think that's something that's only unique to the black and the enslaved periods of America. It was like it's like American enslavement was horrible.
Yeah.
In every stretch of the imagination and way. But
you want to forget about it.
No.
That's what it sounds like.
I
don't know. I'm just saying. From where I'm sitting, that's what it sounds like. That's the narrative.
Let me finish.
Yes,
let me finish. There's slavery as we speak right now. And the enslavement of the African people in the exploitation of their labor to make the greatest country militarily and economically in the history of the world, the United States, was on the back of those individuals. Having said that, they're not the only people that were enslaved. History is filled with human beings enslaving other people. And so I'm simply suggesting that our enslavement is not an excuse. It can't be a rationale for our failure to move forward. I don't care whether you forget it or not. You can't use it as a means to not move forward. Stevie Wonder couldn't see. It didn't stop him from being the greatest musician and composer and performer. So whatever the handicap is, whatever the impediment is, whatever the roadblock is, you have two decisions. Sit back, complain, sit back, cry, or move beyond it. The great leaders overcame those obstacles under the most horrible pressures. They overcame them. Nelson Mandela. You talk about obstacles. I don't think there are any leaders in the United States that overcame the kind of obstacles that Nelson Mandela did. He didn't get a Nobel Peace Prize because he was black running for president in the United States. He sat in prison for 25 years, overcame, went through all kinds of issues, and then went on to be elected president in a country where, you were wiped out if you was an indigenous person.
Yeah, I'm listening to his autobiography on Audible right now.
Right. So there are multitude of things that we can do to overcome and survive in the now. If they could do it in South Africa, most certainly we could do it here. But we can't do it here if we are always looking at what the wrong is and why we're in the wrong. It's good to know that, but with that there has to be a solution. So when it comes to leaders, because I know how you feel about leadership, and I think that's important that people understand, because you as a concept and as a rule, you kind of reject the whole notion of leadership. So when we talk about providing, becoming the North Star, all right, you are a leader.
Yep.
You are a leader. Now, if you are training someone how to engage in a sport or how to think critically as it pertains to life using a chessboard, you are providing leadership. You're creating a leader. So in that concept or in that framework, how do you define leadership?
Well, a leader is someone who takes his lead from the community. You know what I'm saying? From his tribe. He can't go out there and make decisions without, to me, let me put it like this. If we elect you, Stan, as mayor, to me, your job is to say we have a problem. Whatever the problem is, your job is to go out and find out 4 or 5 solutions that are all, good for the planet, good for humans, economical, whatever, the best that you can do. And you bring those 5 back to the community and say, this is what I got. Which way would you all like to go? And we make that decision together with you. and then you go out and do that. The way it is now is completely different. These people go out and do whatever they want, and then they come back and try to shove it down our throats. And the best example I can give you of that is right there downtown, that baseball stadium. That's right. They shoved it down our throat.
Okay. All right. So while I might have a nuance in terms of pushback, I agree with you. Because as a member of the community, if that's what your expectation of the leader is, then I have a responsibility, just short of an obligation, to try my very best to provide you with those solutions. I don't believe that the leader's the only person that should go out and find the solutions.
Well, he has people, the mayor has people that he can put on this task.
But having said that, if that's what your expectation is, then so be it. I think the community, because if he's going to come back to the community, I think that those solutions are in the community. I think the community has more solutions than any leader could ever have, because the leader is a singular individual. The community is made up of tens, hundreds of people. Now, there are leaders in the community. So when you talk about coming back to the community, you're not talking about all 30,000, but the selected individuals within the community. They have solutions. No one's listening to their solution. That's part of the bigger problem, is no one listens to the solutions of those in the community like they should be. And the community is dismissed. What we have is not leadership. What we have is colonization. Harvard's being colonized.
You can call it like that. I call it they're here. They're like an invading force.
That's colonizing.
You know what I'm saying?
Land on the shore and take over.
Yeah.
It's not gentrifying, it's colonizing.
So for me, and so the reason that I always think that a lot of times that parents can't really get involved is because the way that things are set up. They're set up so you really can't get involved.
They don't want you involved.
Right, they don't want you involved. So that's the other issue, Dr. Mya, is that there are systems in place that are set up, and they have, safety. They have their traps and safety valves in place. So when people like me start, I get a lot of the old black people in the community and a lot of the old Spanish-speaking people in the community say, be careful. Everything you say, the system doesn't like. You're a threat to the system. Be careful. They're still talking to me like that.
No, listen, Lou, I know that from the perspective of how it is that, when my mother tried to get information through, all the gatekeepers, all the roadblockers. Yeah, I understand that. I grew up in Hartford, born and raised in Hartford. Okay, so I know the types of obstacles that are presented. It's not easy navigating in Hartford when it is that individuals that may say, oh, we're about community, when they're really not. There's some mean, nasty, diabolical individuals within Hartford's borders that are running game and blocking all types of moves. So if we look at it from the perspective that New England was considered the Inflategate in terms of the NFL team, Inflategate related to the football, right?
Yeah, with the Patriots coming to East Hartford.
So who was checking those footballs to really validate that they were to code, to standard, whatever the case may be. But again, where we find ourselves with individuals blocking solutions, blocking resources, not doing anything in North Hartford in terms of any type of new type of development that is dramatic. So for example, where it is that Weaver is, that road, even when I was at Weaver, has still not been under construction. So they built all those new construction houses looking beautiful. But the road on Granby Street that I rolled past, this is over 30 years ago. That road has not been worked on. So you mean to tell me that nobody considered that the construction of that road to be smoothed out, because it's still got them pits and grooves and all that pothole related stuff going on there over 30 years, and you got new construction that went on within the past 10 years, and nobody said, you know what, we need to do these roads as well. That makes no sense. You build new construction, but you don't work on the road that's right, adjoins it. Okay, who's making those calls?
Call your representatives. Call Eric
yes,
Coleman.
If you call the representatives and nothing's getting done, that's a problem, though.
Yeah, call them.
That's a problem.
Well,
we understand that, but again, think about it though. They tore down the public housing, replaced it with homes that people purchased. The Boys and Girls Club is across the street. The school is across the street. Granby Street, where all that new construction actually occurred, there's those public roads. Lou, they're still pitted with potholes and just bumps and it's just ridiculous. Like, you mean to tell me y'all couldn't have got that done at all at the same time?
Well, I've been retired about.
That makes no sense.
I've been out of Hartford about 5 or 6 years now, maybe 7 or more. I don't know. And that stuff was going on. That stuff was going on Granby Street, you know. And it's awful
down there
because
recently. Still the issue.
So check this out.
30 years later.
We have a lot of issues down that end. Thomas Snell Weaver was a white man that didn't want his kids, black kids, in his school, and they won't take that name off. The only name that should be in that school is Doc Hurley's name. That's the only name that should be on that school. You know what I'm saying? And we have to do better. The same thing at Buckley High School. It really and truly, check this out, in my opinion. It doesn't matter the name that's on the school, right? What matters is what's being produced in that environment. Like, if you build a whole new school and in that school it graduates 1% of the students, that's, if you change the name to Doc Hurley and it's still graduating 1%, keep it as Snell and it's still graduating to 1%, those are not the outcomes that we're seeking. We can't focus on the trivial stuff that's actually occurring. Yes, it is what it is in terms of the name. Okay, but if we're trying to actually pinpoint things that we're looking as valuable outcomes, name changes doesn't matter. Those percentages in terms of graduation rates, reading comprehension rates, math rates, getting into higher education or beyond rates, those matter. That name, changing the name and keeping the same type of statistics, I don't see why we're majoring in the minors. We need to look at it from the bigger picture. What are we really valuing? We could change the name. If we change it to Doc Hurley, Lou, and we still get the same type of rates or results coming out of those schools, what's different? Just the name. Well, I don't know if the statistics are going to be the same because we haven't been there yet. So I'm always terrible at what if questions. Because I remember what's his name? So
change the name. What is the change?
Well, you wanted me to answer the question, but
hold on, friend. Let me ask the question.
I was going to answer the first one you asked.
Let me ask the question. What really changes if the name changes?
The ambience, the environment, the knowledge that we don't have a racist name looming over our children, and our children may like the idea that they don't have a racist looming over them, that they have a notable, someone who sacrificed, someone who was a hero in our community. It makes a big difference, Dr. Mya.
Well, what about Thurman Milner? That was the
Thurman
worst,
Milner School. I'm gonna tell you what happened at Thurman Milner School. Thurman Milner was the worst school in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Then they brung Michael Sharp and his people in, and then what they did, they had one of the best principals in the country, Doreen Crawford, phenomenal leader. And what they did was they bounced her between Michael Sharp's group and the Board of Ed, so she really couldn't do anything. And then Mike got caught up with the fraud and whatever.
You talk about bringing somebody up.
Huh?
I said, talk about bringing somebody up.
Yeah, but I'm bringing him up because he's part of a story. I'm not bringing him up because he's a leader.
Okay.
An example of a good leader.
He isn't.
Stop it, Stan.
Right. He's not an example of a good leader.
But I never said he was.
Okay,
I'm just telling you what happened in that school because you asked me what happened.
Right.
So the Board of Ed did a terrible job. The Hartford Board of Ed, under the leadership of Narvaez, did a terrible job of ensuring that Dr. Crawford had all the resources. She had good people working there, but with Sharp and his team always looming over her and not allowing her to do, and the same thing with the board. And, I don't know, the Christians say you can't worship two masters, something like that. Well, that's what happened with Dr. Crawford. She had two different organizations trying to run the school and not let her do it. You know what I'm saying? So we have a lot of issues like that in our community.
So is it fair to say that it's the people that are getting involved that are causing this rift? Because here's the thing, with everything that you just stated, it sounds like a people issue itself. It doesn't sound like, whether the name of the school is changed, stays the same, or whatever the case may be, is the real issue. So that's the minor.
The real issue is
the name of the school. Hold on for a second, because you just said Thurman Milner School was the poorest performing school.
Yeah.
Now, he did some great things.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, changing of a name makes no type of difference.
But you never let me finish.
Hold on for a second. Yeah. Let me just make this statement.
Yeah.
Changing of the name does not make a difference in terms of the types of outcomes that we're seeking when it is that
I need scientific proof on that.
Hold on for a second.
Mm-hmm.
When it is that individuals who are divisive, who are destructive, who pose obstacles, who tear down things that should be of positive and productive displays and outcomes, are the issue. If these people are in positions to destroy, deconstruct, and obstruct positive and productive outcomes, then it's the people issue. It's not the name of the building that's the issue. It's the people that are in these positions that are the issue.
Okay, so what happened at Milner School, it was the worst performing school. Dr. Crawford, with all the problems that she had, she brung it up a little bit. Then they brung a sister from New Haven, and the school is doing a lot better now. So once they got rid of the other organization, right, they were able to do the things that they can do. And I believe that erasing every segment, every memory, anything racist is good for people in general and good for the world.
That's not a problem. I think most people would agree with that.
I will never, and let me ask y'all this, to you and Stan and to all our listeners and audiences, they're changing the names of the military bases from Southern generals to presidents. Now, I want y'all to tell me on this program which one of the American presidents up to right now has not been a racist. And what's the difference between taking General Lee and putting Teddy Roosevelt, who was a Klan member? What's the difference?
Well,
and this is what I keep saying. These are the things that we accept.
Yeah, but Lou, I mean, these.
Yes, brother.
It's like
everything in every problem in America can't be solved by saying it's a racist issue, and therefore when that changes, America will change.
No, but I'm pointing it out so we can work towards changing it. I'm not just pointing fingers. I'm pointing out the issues because a lot of our people, they won't have these conversations in public.
Right. But I'm
just having this conversation with the community.
I would contend that a lot of people don't know the value of the good names and what the people who did great things mean, let alone names of people who they have no idea who these people are. They don't know their history. They don't know nothing about them. So they're not walking in the they're not walking in the aura, the shadow, the oppression of the name of somebody who died 200 years ago, and they don't know. They're sitting next to somebody who's who's getting ready to go out and mass murder. They don't know that until this happens. So, you know, we're talking about folk who, now if we find out somebody was bad, this, that, and the third, you pass some legislation, get the name changed, and we move on. We don't derail our whole forward movement because we found out that somebody's name, that something's named after a person who, after we did a deep dive and researched their whole past, was all jacked up with all kinds of issues.
So let me ask y'all this then. I see where this is
going. Keep majoring in the minors.
So
this is
so let me ask you
where we've been majorly distracted. We've been majorly distracted by majoring in minor issues, right? And so where it is that we find ourselves looking for solutions that we consider things of true value, we've wasted a lot of time majoring in some minor things that have not gotten us to. If you think about it, if you've been here over 400 years, you would think certain things would have actually occurred. But here's the thing. We're not the ones that created the issues. So if we're not the ones that created the issues, that means we created the issues and continue to perpetuate said issues are getting some type of benefit from maintaining the status quo, which means that us ourselves cannot do it alone. It's got to be all hands on deck. That's all hands on deck. It doesn't matter what you look like. All hands on deck. Right? It's actually wrong. And until that's actually become something that's embraced, we're going to find ourselves in a lot of the same situations that actually were occurring 100 years ago.
Let me ask the audience and you guys this. Do you think that there are people alive who send their children or kids that were going to that school, black and brown kids who were going to that school? You think parents are still alive, or when Thomas Snow Weaver was principal, or kids are alive when he was principal that were going to that school, black and brown kids?
Now, say the question again because you lost me.
Do you think that there are still people alive,
right
either
now,
parents who send their kids or kids who went to Weaver when Thomas Snell Weaver was still alive?
I don't know anything about Thomas Snell Weaver.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Because I would ask, the thing for me is that I would ask the parents or the kids who went to that school who know firsthand what Thomas Snell said and how he felt about how they feel about a name change, right? Because what we're doing right now is we're making a decision about a woman having an abortion, and us three, we don't have anything to do with that woman. I would ask the parents or the kids that went to that school how they feel about a name change. I think that would be the adequate thing to do.
Well, that's not a problem. Right. You know, if they want to change the name, that's fine. But you know,
no. But I want them to tell us how they feel, how they felt when they knew that he said that, and how we're talking on this show about that's a small thing. We shouldn't be talking about that.
So if
I want to hear from parents.
So you said that Thomas Snell didn't want his kids going to school with black children.
No, he said that he didn't want black kids going to Weaver.
Oh, to Weaver. Well, guess what? Black kids is all up in Weaver. Who cares what he said?
Right.
But that's for me. That's Stan.
Right.
He doesn't want black kids in Weaver.
Right.
Well, you don't get to make that decision. You can want whatever you want, Thomas.
Yeah.
Because that's what he wants. So he has that much power.
I don't know.
That because he doesn't want black kids in his school, we should be affected by his narrow, bigoted, racist attitude.
I don't know.
That changes to me. To me, that changes when black kids are at Thomas Snell and his name is on the building.
Yeah.
We're not going to change it. We understand what you said. Every day a black kid graduates from that school should be a slap in the face to Thomas Snell. That should be the motivator for every kid in that school to graduate at the top of their class.
Absolutely.
At 4.0, just to rub his face in it. And they should get up there and say to Thomas Snell, how do you like me now, high five, and walk across the stage. That would do far more damage than to remove his name and push him off into oblivion,
Right.
which is fine too. But I know one thing. I'm not going to go on no crusade. I'm going to be on a crusade to make sure that the kids in Weaver got the books they need.
That's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
More than what the name of the school. I don't know nothing about Thomas Snell. It's just a name.
Yes.
To
Right.
me,
That's exactly how we live.
a name is, one of my very best friends in the world. I have a meeting with him once a week. He might be watching. I'm sure he remembers. We were having a discussion. This is 40 years ago, probably, about names. And this is a sensitive issue to him, and I understand it's sensitive to him, and it's real. So I'm not making light of it. But people process things differently. And we're talking about our last names as being slave names, names of ownership.
Yes.
And so I said, well, if I could change my name, I would just have a singular name, and it would be Stan, because it defines who I am. I'm not going to change my name. I said, but when I have my first son, I'm going to call him Boy.
How does Stan define who you are?
There you go.
Stan. How does Stan define who you are?
Because I have a personality. I have likes, dislikes. There's things that people like about me. There's things that people despise about me. And that is all put together when they speak of me and they use the name that they know me by, Stan.
Would they feel about you differently if you change your name?
No. Okay. They may think, let me rephrase that. The fact that I changed my name would become the issue. Why'd Stan change his name? Oh, something must be wrong. Now you're creating this thing. If they knew me as Tom, then they would associate my name with Tom. I could become the artist formerly known as, or all that kind of silliness.
Michael.
Yeah.
One word.
Right. To me, the greatest level of recognition you could get from somebody is to be known as a singular name. Cher. Michael.
Madonna.
Obama. Prince.
I'm gonna throw my name in there. Big Lou.
That's two names.
But I'm still known by that.
Big Lou. Everyone knows who Lou is.
Yes.
Right? So if you can be known by a singular, you define the word Lou.
No, I don't identify as that. That's how I'm identified. But I don't identify as that. That's what I'm saying.
Right, but that's in the headspace where that discussion is happening is within the real estate that you own. Other people have no idea how you process
exactly.
that. They think of you as who you are. They don't know a way to identify you as. There was a guy that I used to know. His name was what I used to call him. I used to call him something because everyone else called him that. Like his name was like Doug. I can't really remember his name right now, but Doug. So everyone called him Dougie. And one time I said, hey, Dougie. He says, you know something, Stan? I said, what's that? I hate that name. I said, I'm sorry.
You didn't know.
I didn't know. Everyone calls you Dougie. You never said anything until now. What do you want me to call you? Call me Doug.
He likes his whole name.
Okay, I'll call you that.
You don't like Stanley or Stan. Which one do you prefer?
As long as you don't call me late for dinner and serve eggs, I'm good. It really is not a big deal with me. I know who people are relative to what they call me and how they call me. At Pratt & Whitney, I'm James. To those who kind of endeared themselves to me, I'm Jimmy at Pratt. In Philadelphia area, everyone calls me Stanley. My sister calls me Stanley. My dad, my mom call me Stanley. I can count the number of people in Hartford who call me Stanley. Most people call me Stan. Some call me J Stan. Others are insistent in calling me Pastor Stan.
How about J Stan?
People call me J Stan. When I refer to myself in the third person, I refer to me as J Stan.
But see, these are all things that you define for yourself. They weren't defined for you, and then you accepted them. You see the difference?
Well, people call me some names that I don't accept, and that's what they call me.
But that's not your definition.
That's not a definition of myself or anything else.
No.
Right.
That's their definition, and again, that's different.
Right. I've been called arrogant, prickly, self-centered.
Those are adjectives, though.
What else?
Those aren't pronouns.
What
Those
else?
are adjectives.
Narcissistic. The narcissist. I mean, they call me all kinds of things. But names don't bother me. You know, negative names don't bother me because that's who they think I am. And I appreciate that. I would love to know if you think I'm a jackass. I don't have a problem with that. I've had people call me that too.
Right.
And so now I know where we stand. So now that we got that out of the way, what can we do to get stuff done?
Right.
You know, how you refer to
Exactly.
me, I'm not defined by what you call me or what you think of me. None of those things affect my headspace. It just doesn't. I am not what someone else thinks I am. I may be that to them, which means that they will self-eliminate them from my presence because they think I am X, Y, and Z, so they don't want to be around me. I'm good with that. These things don't bother me. They never have. They never have. Now I know plenty of people that if you look at them the wrong way, cut your eyes, they're ready to get out the car with a tire iron.
You know, this thing about I think is best exemplified in the military. You know, the thing with names and people. You know, you could be in a space, you know, in the barracks where you're segregated. You know, all the whites are on side and everybody else is on the other. And, you know, when that bell rings for you to go to war, you have to trust that racist has your back unquestionably. And you got his back the same way, you know, because it's different. Now we're talking about, and see, that's when you know who's who. That's real life and death.
Well,
So
at that
all
point, you're all dependent on one another.
Exactly.
You're operating, which is what
So
we
no
were
matter
talking
what
about.
color, what kind of hair you got, where you were born.
Right.
You know, at that moment, we're all one. We're all united. We all want to come home.
Right. You're fighting as a unit. That's what we were actually
to
talking
fight
about
over
to
here,
begin
though.
with.
To fight over here. So you're my friend in the war, but when we come home, I'm going to try to kill you and you're going to try to kill me.
That's because you know how you no longer have a common interest.
Exactly.
The interest is self.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter what it is. Your color, you're too tall, you eat egg, I hate egg. If people will find ways to separate themselves from one another and group up with those who have like minds, and they create little silos for themselves. The only one that matters are the people in their silo. And so, you know, the more people start self-identifying, and there's nothing wrong with that, but the more that they do, the more they exclude everyone else. And then they become intolerant of other people. And that's when things start getting really jacked up. Now, the justification of killing somebody is nothing. We kill why
233 mass shootings up to this week. This year alone, 233 up to now. Maybe it could have been more because this was like Friday or Saturday that I seen those statistics.
What do they use as a statistical number for mass? More than 3? Because the mass shootings, if there's mass
it's
shootings,
either 3 or 5.
All right, so the mass shootings haven't gone up; they're just reporting on them.
Right. It's just like police brutality.
Right. It didn't go up; they're just reporting on them.
Yeah.
Just like COVID stuff didn't go down. You're just not hearing about it anymore.
Right.
So now COVID doesn't matter because you don't hear about it every day.
Well, the government decided not to, to take it off the air. That was their way of combating it.
Right. And that's the way they handle stuff.
Right. By hiding it.
They lift it up or they lower it down. So all of this stuff is very controlled. It's propaganda. It's not news. It's propaganda. It's propaganda. Anytime you have competing news outlets run with the same story on different parts of the country, it's no longer news. because it's impossible. The three of us are not on the same page. How can 200 outlets that tell the news be on the same page, telling the same story the same way at 5 o'clock?
Right. Well, they all synchronize.
They're all synchronized.
Yeah.
Because they're not telling the same. It's propaganda. So
I think people like me listen to the news for the weather, and even then, we have to go outside and check to make sure.
Exactly, Lou. Exactly.
Because it's like that. That's how it is.
Exactly.
They just tell us it's government control. They tell us what they want. You know what I'm saying?
Right, under the illusion of freedom. No.
And I just want to say one more thing in terms of names and statutes and anything like that. I always tell people that I know magic. My mother passed it on to me, and so I feel like I'm protected all the time. I feel like I have hundreds, if not thousands, of my ancestors with me at all the time. It's a very beautiful feeling to have. And so the reason that I always speak about racism is because I'm just keeping their memory alive. So we never forget, how they did us and how they continue to do us. So until I leave this world, that's going to be, that's going to be what I do. I'm going to speak about it so we can bring it out in the open and talk about ways that we can erase it. Because I said this before and I'll say it again. Black people, black and brown people, we can't make a decision without thinking about race. And when white people make a decision, they never think about race. And that in itself should be a concern for people as to where we're at in terms of race relations. And a lot of the things that we talk about are more in theory, because a lot of times when we go out and we still try to do things, there's a lot of pushback. I was reading in the newspaper last week that there's a mayor in one of the cities that had hitting a tape of a couple officers killing a man because it was election time. And this is the kind of stuff that, for the most part, we've learned to accept or not to be surprised about, because this is what they do. The same thing happened in Hartford, not at that level. But the day that Luke Bronin decided that Jason Thornton wasn't going to be prosecuted for his crimes, we knew we were going down the wrong way.
That's when you discovered?
Right. I just want to say one thing before we wrap up, because I got my Leadership Academy I'm going into. Lou, based on what you stated, I would have to amicably disagree. There's only one race, the human race, and I operate out of making my decisions not in racism, right? And what you said is valid for you, but it does not speak to me. And so where it is that racism is actually a construct that became business, big business, billion-dollar, trillion-dollar business. That's where we find ourselves. It's a mindset. It's how people think. One race only, the human race. Have a great day. Peace. I look forward to doing this again next week. Have a great one, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Mya. It's always wonderful to hear you and to have an opportunity to share some thoughts with you.
All right, my friends, that brings us to the end of another exciting conversation. Every Wednesday, Dr. Bowen's here and Brother Lou. Generally, the first hour, Dr. Bowen, sometimes she stays a little later. We talk about education, then we kick it up a couple of notches, talking about things of a more controversial nature with Big Lou Delgado.
Thank you, Stan. It's always wonderful to be here. To all our listeners and viewers, keep watching, keep calling, ask questions. We want to hear all of your comments. We just want to open up the floor for meaningful conversation that hopefully will bring some meaningful change about. Peace, family.
All right, my friends, if you are interested in participating, if you will, with our program in terms of conversation, the numbers, well, not the number, but the on the screen is there's somebody at my front door. I wonder if my wife will get it. The emails. Drop an email to us. morningtalk@accesstv.org. morningtalk@accesstv.org. That, if you send us your phone number, we'll put you on the dedicated caller list, and we will make sure that when you call us, we'll put you on the air, all right? So until next time, we'll talk to you real soon. You'll go out and have a fabulous rest of your day.
Another good one, Stan.